You have now entered the agency. I welcome you here today with an interview with LaKaye Mbah. I'm your host, Agent Mbey, also known as Mensa Bay, and we're just gonna be having a conversation about LaKaye, about her studio practices, about her stories and her experience. LaKaye is a mother of a young daughter. She's a photographer. She's an artist, a visual artist, and an art educator. So, LaKaye, I'm gonna let you take the floor here for a second. Just give a little background about yourself, where you're from, things like that.
Okay. Hi, Nessa. This is
Hey,
exciting. Thank you for inviting me to come up here. It's great. So, I'm LaKaye, as Michael said. I am from Virginia. Virginia Beach specifically. I lived in Baltimore for 12 years, where I did most of my young adult years. And when I moved back to Virginia, um, I was a mother and teacher and all those other things that I started off being over there. So, anyway, that led me to working at TCC. So I started teaching at Tidewater Community College as a photography professor. Let me back up a little bit. I've been
okay.
a photographer since I graduated from undergrad. HU. Can I get with these? Okay.
My HU background,
So
let's call it that.
so when I graduated, my very first job was working as a photographer in one of
Right.
the big box stores. So ever since then, I've pretty much been a portrait photographer. I've done weddings, I've done real estate, I've done events, any type of photography. I've pretty
Right.
much done sports, anything. So when I got back to Virginia, that's when I had the opportunity to start teaching photography at Tidewater Community College. How far back you want me to go? Let me see. So,
Whatever feels good for you.
um, um, So after that, I spent a number of years, and it was this weird transition period in the mid 2000s where um, basically I had to go back to school so I could keep my teaching job. I was happy teaching. I was an adjunct. I was
Right.
doing my photography thing. I was teaching on the side, but circumstances became necessary in Virginia and a lot of different kind of schools for me to have a certain number of credits in photography. And
Mm,
I had just been a photographer, pretty much self-taught. I had a couple classes here and there,
right.
but I didn't have the college credits necessary in order for me to teach on the college level. Which leads me to the wonderful, illustrious Norfolk State University, where I decided to go back.
Whatever. Same stories. Awesome.
Where I decided to go back um, to explore a different part of my relationship to art, but also so I could get those. What I thought I was going to do was just get my last few credits, get another master's so I could teach photography. That was my goal when I got.
Another master's, you just said. So you had another one before you came
Oh
to
yeah,
Nova
yeah.
State.
In there, I kind of slid that in.
Yeah. Sprinkled that in there.
My my original master's, well, my undergrad was in mass media arts. I don't
Right.
think they have the program anymore, but I was mass media arts. And then when I was in Baltimore, I enrolled in University of Baltimore, and I was a publications design major. I wanted to work for magazines. I wanted to have a magazine and
Hmm.
all that good stuff. Which uh, in that was about 2006. And right around there is when the economy took a nosedive and all the magazine job dreams that I had pretty much faded away. So that's what happened to that. But it was a good experience, but that was my goal with that. Okay, so when I got to Norfolk State, I enrolled as a fine arts major, but pretty much my entire photography career had been portrait photography.
Right.
People would hire me and I would do what they wanted me to do. So enrolling in the school was very eye opening. I had the technical chops, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
but I didn't have the, how would you say, Mensa? I needed to put the education and the art history behind what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So that was super eye-opening, and it was a painful lesson.
Yeah, those are like the foundational elements that you would get in a normal like art school. You would kind of surpass or skip some of those steps. It was like full dive into I got a camera and I can take images and gotcha.
Yes. So I had to go back. Well, I had to do it concurrently. I had to do art on a master's level, but also go back and teach myself all the art history that I kind of, was like, oh, it's pretty. Yeah. No, not anymore. I need to know why it's pretty, who made it, what year, what movement.
Thanks.
And what is pretty anyway? Does it need to be pretty? No.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, you witnessed it.
Yeah, witnessed it. It was really interesting having had that background of going through, undergrad and getting those foundational elements, taking art, since the childhood, and then getting into a program where I would say anybody that was there before me had that same background. So I wasn't really, I didn't get to experience that until I met like you and Dan. Yet I would say it kind of had similar experiences in that. And so yeah, like I guess we all like I witnessed you all like rely on me on some of those foundational elements. Like you've been through it, you're big brother when it comes to this. So like help us through this stuff. And we'll
little brother.
I happily took that role as best as I could. It's interesting though, you did bring up you wanted to do like a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how long has your mother been doing was it Hampton Roads Gazette?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, in Baltimore, very few people, it wasn't very popular, but I had a magazine in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. I started it just because I'm the type of person, when I start something, I just do it. Yeah. So I had a magazine. It was called Solstice City. It was very small. And I used to interview poets and artists and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't have the foundational background. I was just doing it because I learned how to use a couple of programs. So that's when I went through my first master's in publication design, because I wanted to learn how to do it and then go work for a magazine. So after I did that, my mom was like, "Oh, that's cool." My mom has let me shout out Loretta Kahn real quick, because she's an icon in this area. You know what I'm saying? So my mom has always been a very creative type. She is right now she's a jewelry maker. She does a lot of gemstone jewelry, and she worked in silversmithing for a while. But she's been an entrepreneur and a teacher. So I guess, wow. Thanks, Nathan. Now I realize I'm turning into my mother. There it is.
We always turn into the people we don't think we are.
So he had a background in old school type setting back in the day, where print presses, you had to, put the blocks down. She worked in a printing company. She used to do layouts and stuff back when it was called word processing. It was called something like that before typesetting or something. Before computers. You had to do it with the typewriter, and then you would send it to the press. So she worked in the press office. So we kind of played off of that. So after I had my magazine in Baltimore, a couple of years later, she decided to start a newspaper. I would like to take credit for that. She did all her own. So her newspaper is a completely nonprofit newspaper. So she interviews community servants and people who work in community service. So it could be anything from child protective services, anything that has to do with bettering the community, but for nonprofit. So the paper was free, and then eventually she started an award ceremony where she would honor up to 50 volunteers from these different organizations, and it became super popular. So that's kind of in transition right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to save it, because she is wanting to retire.
Yeah.
But you were featured in there.
Yes.
Had your mural.
Yeah.
And then I think again, did they do the graduation? I think you did. But
I don't remember that one, but yeah. So much appreciated for that. I think I still have a copy of it. I brought it here with me. I brought it to California. I thought it was important.
nice.
I got all my publication features with me, so yeah, that's fine. I want to
Did
get
y'all hear that? All his publication features, all of them, 5711 of them.
yeah, we could say that. We could say that. Yeah, I want to, since we have a unique relationship of being in grad school together, I want to like tell some of those experiences and stories, from your point of view, and then we can just easily got to go back and forth over what we both saw in those moments. So, coming into the grad program, with what it was that you already had, being a photographer and what you might have expected to do coming in, what was your experience compared to what you expected?
I won't say this in a bad way, but it was like somebody took the rug and fit like this. Well, I was standing on it. Only because this would be interesting for anybody who's thinking about grad school. So my experience up until Norfolk State was that somebody give me an assignment, I do it at the prescribed time, they tell me how to fix it if anything is wrong. But that's not the way an art school works. So basically, there is no wrong or right. There's only the emotion that you put behind it, the research that you put behind it, and your ability to defend your decisions.
Yeah.
So you're not raised to do that. And unless you come from a family who has taught you that, I did not. My mom's very old school in that way. It's always been A leads to B leads to C.
Right.
But this was like, what do you think? What do you mean, what do I think? I need you to tell me what I need to do. But they're like, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm like, Minister, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Well, what do you think you should do? Like, you know what?
I don't know how much help I was in like just wrapping around and retelling you the same thing that the professor told you, just in more layman's terms.
Great times. But I don't, it's as much fun as I'm making and as hard as it was, because it was super hard. I don't regret it, and I cherish the entire experience. So for instance, I don't think that there's much I'm afraid to do now. I can put together a program. I can work. Oh, I'll tell you the biggest lesson.
All right.
And I realize I just cut myself off, but I'll tell you the biggest lesson. Failure.
You sure it's not entropy?
You're not, huh?
You sure it's not entropy is the greatest lesson?
Don't say that word again.
Well, not entropy.
That's not it.
It's endocept. The endocept. Woo! Anyway.
Nobody knows what that is. And once you all look it up, I learned zeitgeist the first semester.
Oh, I'm gonna tell you a story about zeitgeist later. But go ahead and you can get back to the failure lesson.
Okay. The biggest lesson I learned in grad school is to accept failure. And failure is not a bad thing, and it's a part of the process. Another thing that we are not taught in all these years of schooling is that failing is okay, and it's just a part of the process. There's been times when I missed deadlines on those papers that were super important to get in, but I just could not do it. Because for whatever reason, I had to finish researching, or the paper would be 45 pages long with 55 sources that we had to cite. And the first time it happened, I was just destroyed, because that was a failure. And in a real life situation, or what I perceived to be a real life situation, that would have been like the worst thing that could ever happen, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, what's the worst thing that can happen? I turn it in later, So I learned so much about that. And like, I would have projects that didn't work out, that I'll have to publicly defend while they didn't work out. And I thought that was the worst thing that can happen. Well, yeah, they just kept raising the bar as to what was the worst thing. And then
I think I had like that similar experience in like when I reached a point where like I would create a project or work on something that was like out of my realm and it didn't work out, like I got excited to tell those stories because I was like, yo, look what I was doing. At least I guess when I did reach a level of like success in it and I could
Mm-hmm.
see how far I could go, I'd be like, man, look, I was making some glass works and I broke the glass and now I know not to use this. And I was doing
Mm-hmm.
this and I was working with this and now I know that I don't want to do this because it takes too long. So I found a
Right.
faster way. So it was more so when I was able to tell what I learned over all those levels of failure. And I could saw like, for Solomon as an example, like when I go to tell a story, I can see his face light up like he already knew it. I'd be like, all right, I figured something
That's a
out.
whole nother talk
Yeah.
about what he already knows before you say it.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought I could escape that in life. It doesn't happen. I like text him now and he'd be like, I was just about to call you. Yeah, today? Like 2 minutes. I'm like, whatever. So that's what's up. So like artistic practice wise,
Mhm.
um, you came in a photographer, and I
Mhm.
experienced and saw you become more of a mixed media artist. And I think the program kind of there's a word for it. It always happens, but they pride themselves on like not being, having these like stick or strict uh, disciplines, so to speak, when it comes to the arts. Like, come in a painter and you just paint. It's like you come in and you almost everybody's like encouraged to be a mixed media artist. Like do whatever it is that you want to do. So how did that experimental phase like influence your artistic practice and what you like are doing now?
Well, it's interesting. We had a couple of professors on the do everything you want. Then we had a couple who were choose one thing and stick with it the
Yeah.
whole way. So I think it could have gone either way. I could have just done photography the whole time, and I think that would have been fine. But I was in a mental state where I was ready to try something new.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, as I was saying, I've been a photographer for years and years and years. And then when I was able to get around different types of artists and really just be open minded to what I could explore, and then having to have the reason behind why I was doing things instead of
Right.
just, this is pretty, let me try this. Yeah, I keep
Mm-hmm.
saying this is pretty because that's how I approached
Yeah.
what I like about art. I like this, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't talk about why. So having to have that basis of why I'm doing something, it led me into working with fabric because the fabric's rich history and the African diaspora. And my grandmother was a seamstress, and that was my own personal connection to being able to create art. So that's how I kind of ended up working with textiles to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, that was really eye-opening as well. So eventually, I worked with purchase textiles, and then I started dyeing fabric, and then I would adhere photographs to fabric, and that was trying to reconcile the two different disciplines that I have
Right.
together.
Ooh.
Oh, good, yeah,
Yeah.
good. Um,
This is
and
reminding
then,
me of other connections. That's like the who just said it? Maybe it was somebody else, but it just like filled a gap that I was thinking of, like between like connecting two different things with your work.
mhm,
You like your description of that just like filled the gap, and I was like, that's the thing.
wonderful. Don't forget to come back to all of these things, but I will certainly forget that you
Yeah.
did. Like, what was that? I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
something else. You said, yeah, I'm going to come back to that. So don't forget that one either.
Yeah. I need to write it down because I forgot. So how it happens. Was it? No, it wasn't Solomon. Oh no, story about Zeitgeist. There we go. Zeitgeist. I don't know, I can tell that story now, honestly, but it doesn't matter. But I had I was working on an assignment for my class that I'm teaching now, which is color theory, basic design 2. And I decided, like, the original assignment for the theory we were teaching would have been for them to create rugs, and then they just create a rug and then change one dominant color in it just to see how much it affects like the look of the artwork. And I just didn't feel like making them create work, so I didn't feel like the students would connect or something like that. So I was like, what's an easier way to pull this off to where they don't have to like use paint and do all of this? And this is partly based off of like my students. Most of my students aren't actually art majors. And so I was like, oh, what if they did like, custom shoes? Like it uses the same principles. And I know I like years ago, I had customized some shoes and I was like, I'm pretty sure that stuff is still available online. So I looked on Nike.com, saw that you can like customize your own shoes. And they had so many options on there as far as like different places where you could change the colors. So I was like, well, this is perfect. So I had pitched that as like an assignment and sent that off to Nebulet and CC Solomon. And then they, I just explained loosely because I hadn't even made the assignment out yet, but I just explained real quick that like, this is what I'm working on for this assignment. And then they got like excited about me. All right, and so my internet connection was unstable, but it's cool. They got excited about me just like sharing what I was thinking of doing, and then I was like, oh, we should adopt this. And then Ocala came into the conversation, and that's where Zeitgeist popped in.
So this was the scene of my very first, I think it was the first solo exhibition outside of campus. That's what I'll say. And
or Norfolk.
Look at my cohorts, my squad. I can hear you. Did you hear anything I said?
No, once you started, the moment you started getting into the description of the image, it started freezing. So I might start freezing soon too, but go ahead. Let's get back into that.
What I said was, okay, so this picture kind of represents what we called squad life, because when you are working, we had a very small group of people in our cohort. So we spent a lot of time together working under pressure and bouncing ideas off of each other, and you get to know each other very well during that time. So these are the people I relied on the most to get me through the program, the most. So this was opening night of my first solo exhibition outside of being at Norfolk State. So this was a very special night.
Yep. Yeah, we all came out. That was a nice showing.
I had some African food out there,
Yeah,
I had
some jollof rice. Was that some jollof rice?
My mom made the jollof rice. She came through with that. And the professor said it tasted pretty authentic.
Nice.
So yeah, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, especially you got two Nigerian professors.
Representing.
That's a fact. All right, so let's get into some of these works. I remember this is when you first started working with glass, which was an interesting, I think, exploration for you. I don't even remember when you started exploring it and why, so we can't get into that. But I know this was like your like peak piece when it came to when you started exploring glass. You're like, all right, this is one that's like for the program. So you can get into this one.
I didn't even talk about how I got into glass. I talked about fabric a lot.
Yeah.
But before I did the fabric, the glass, let me tell you what the glass inspiration came from. You used to sneak off and do your own work that you would not show the professors. So I said, what can I do that is not going to be graded and nobody will know about, so that I can process it on my own? So I took a stained glass class because it wasn't offered at the school and nobody else was doing it. And like, here I am. But I ended up really enjoying it, and I ended up buying all of the equipment. So the way this kind of came about is that I had a really horrible painting. My first semester, I'm not a painter. I had to give that dream up. No matter how much I wanted to be like Professor Ocala, his stuff is amazing. Paint is not my forte. But one of the pieces that I painted had a very cubist. It was the work that I painted ended up being very cubist in nature. So I decided to kind of bring in those primitive shapes, and it worked really well with the glass. The things I was painting it was horrible in paint, but it worked really well as far as glass is concerned.
Right.
So this piece is called My Sister's Keeper. And basically, if you look at the hands, they're kind of holding hands right over left. And that's, in the spirit of giving and receiving and just having each other's back. And it's also kind of fashioned after, I did some research about the Bois mask. It has a lot of stuff to it. So we have the Bois mask, which they celebrate the seasons using different shapes. So the circles represent, the concentric circles represent the butterfly wings that are, creating shapes in the water. But also, this is very, I learned about my love for Aaron Douglas.
Yep.
Name. Good, thank you.
I got you.
Thank you. Yes. So Aaron Douglas is the man. So all of the monochromatic type of tone on tone colors, and also a lot of his pieces have the circles come out from the most important part of the piece. So I kind of put all of that in together. I was very proud of this piece. So proud, in fact, that I didn't want to do any more after this.
Until you got commissioned to do another one.
Until I got commissioned to do another one. So this one is the same thing. So this is significant. It represents the sorority. So the woman who commissioned it is an Alpha Kappa Alpha. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So she commissioned me to do something with the colors. And I thought it fit in very well. So this is an interesting transition because the piece that I created for school was layered and layered upon layered with meaning. And so I could defend that thing backwards and forwards. And it's a better piece because of it, because I knew where it came from. But I was able to translate that into a commission piece, which is not always easy to do, but that was a big lesson for me to learn that it could happen.
Yeah.
And it could have the face value understanding as well as my own understanding of the original intended piece of art.
Right. Yeah, because looking at it, I mean, it still has the sense of my sister's keeper, and then that's really what the sorority represents. So at that face value, it's like it fits that. And you got the colors and all of that, and then when it comes to the deeper meanings, where they reside in the piece, but you don't have to tell that story again here. See, it's dope because actually I had this one originally, and then I was like, there was a different one. And I kept looking at this, and I was like, I think maybe this is the original, but I was like, no, I think there was a different one. And when I scrolled, I was like, oh, it was the picture I just showed before this. So I was like, oh no, it was that one.
The first one you remember really well because you helped me frame it.
Yeah.
So you did the framing on the first one, and this one, the size is different because I had to reformat it so I could buy a frame since Mensa had graduated and gone on to bigger and better things. And I could not build a frame. So this one I framed myself, and it fit a standard frame, which is also another really important lesson as far as the I don't say commercial art practice, but the commissioned art practice, how to take your work and save on costs, but also make it more practical. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, that's nice. And so this is where I wanted to draw a correlation between this work and your photography, in which you creating imagery that looks very similar, but resorting or returning back to your original medium of photography. So I have two examples of that. You have this, that picture of your mother, and then a picture of you and your friends in very similar poses and compositions. And so do you like intentional, or was it, you feel like it just in some way just influenced it over time? Because I know these photographs are from like more recent times, or more maybe this year, last year.
The photos are older than the stained glass. So mentally, you've done it again. You've pulled together ideas that I didn't even realize were present. But I've always had a very strong connection to my friends, which comes from my mom. My mom is in the middle. Shout out to Loretta. And these are a couple of her best friends. She has lots of strong women who are beside her at all times.
Yeah.
So I was raised around that. So that's probably why that imagery led itself to my work because that's so interesting. I didn't realize I'd done that, but here it is. And there's one more person who affected the artwork. Lady who did the printing, uh, Black lady lived in Mexico.
Catlett?
Yes, Elizabeth Catlett. It's an artwork. There's a couple of artworks by Elizabeth Catlett that I also had in mind when I was creating the pieces. And everything just kind of circles back because this is the kind of relationship building that I love to show in my work.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that I had replicated it in the fine art work that I was doing as well.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that it did.
Like you like trios.
I like a good trio. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't we all? Yeah, it's really interesting. I tend to like, I find, I think I experienced that, I witnessed that from like either people like when they have the chance to like talk to somebody and just like tell their story, usually you find yourself like coming up with these realizations about your life and how the one thing influenced the other. And sometimes it might take somebody's outside eye who doesn't know all the different things that led up to it. They just have maybe the imagery that's like, well, this is similar to this, and they're able to draw those connections or potentially draw those connections in which the artist or the creator can be like, oh, wow, you just told me about something about myself. And so now I want to get into similarly, your photography. This is more so going to be about how your works in fabric transformed to what they are now, which you have an example in your background, one of your shields, and how you're having to use your photographic skills to document and show these works because they're meant to be worn. And so I did find it interesting here that there was an image I've seen her come up on your Instagram quite a bit, and I just pulled this one because it had something where there was like an accessory on the clothing that was like, oh yeah, this looks shield enough, but like she didn't make this, but I can like pull it off. So like, I was like trying to scroll more. I was like, if I had like 2 examples, it'd be perfect. But this is one example, and then this was just another photograph, which I don't know if this was a more recent or later photograph of yours. But I thought it was powerful. I think the comment that the model had said, it said something about like making her feel like Michelle Obama or something like that, or like the first lady or something like that. And so just that sense of like capturing something where it makes someone feel empowered to see themselves, and the role you have as the photographer to set them up in that space to feel that way or to pose that way, and then you capturing it. And then getting into your shields, is this one question I have, is the model for like, what are the models for the
No, I'm waiting for you to give it a name because I like seeing what you come up with.
I mean, I was just gonna call them what everybody else calls the other things, but I can't think of what they're called.
What?
The things that people put clothes on.
Mannequin?
Yeah, mannequin. That's what I was gonna call it.
That doesn't seem like that's the word you were gonna use.
That's what I was looking for.
Right.
But like, I don't know, when I was looking at this, I was like, this kind of favors Danietta.
It is. It's totally Danietta.
Know my people.
I know. We know each other's profiles,
And so of course I want to hear about the shields and that project and how that how you got to this point of creating these shields and what they mean and all the different stories that come with that, but also how you're having to use your photography as a support to sharing these works with the world or potential clients and things of that nature.
So let's see. The original intent of the shield was when Black Panther was released a couple of years ago, and everybody wanted to go out and represent themselves, represent their heritage, well, the kind of heritage that we kind of have to put upon ourselves because not everybody really knows where you come from. I'm fortunate in that I know that my father is Nigerian, he's Igbo. I know enough that I can research that and put the information into it, but I wanted to adorn myself let me just go back a little bit. At that time, at the release, the opening, everybody was going to roll out in their African wear. It was the kente cloth, something. We all going to get it in because we were so excited about this movie coming out.
Yeah.
So I went to the opening, but I wanted to have something I could just put on that would be easy to put on and take off, and it wouldn't cost a lot. I didn't have to get a custom outfit made and all of that. So this particular one, I had the fabric in time, but I didn't have this in time to wear to the event. But it inspired the ability to put something on that would kind of transform you and elevate your current clothing and kind of give you that regalness and the feeling of pride that you could put on something that represents you. So the colors of the Nigerian flag are green and white. So this fabric that I found was really indicative of reminding me of the flag. And this one in particular is about strength and it's about being a warrior. There was this African women's war in the early, like turn of the century, and the women were the ones who were able to fight back some of the colonists. It goes a lot deeper into that. So that's where this came from. It kind of had that correlation between the warrior women. I haven't seen the movie yet, but at the time I was thinking about the women who were going to be represented in the Black Panther movie, who were also the warriors of the movie. So we have the soldier represented, the gold, which is wealth. I mean, anything. Well, in Nigerian culture, the gold. Well, in Igbo culture, the gold represents wealth.
Yeah.
And the four little green gems in the middle, those are representative of the market days. There are 4 market days in the part of Nigeria my father was from.
Nice.
So I was trying to put together different elements in order to tell the story. So there's the strength, there's the women's war, the wealth, the strength. I said strength already.
Yeah.
And the and the warriorness of it.
Okay.
And this was the first one I did.
Nice. Right. And then we can see it worn with an adoring headpiece here. Yeah, I think when I first started seeing these photographs come out, and then that's when I started seeing how you were implementing your skills as a photographer to really elevate the artwork, because they tell you in art school, having a good photograph of your work is just as important as having a good good artwork. And so because of the nature of the work, it's wearable, so it falls in the kind of in fashion, and most fashion has to be seen worn or in motion or something of that nature. So they don't just stand alone as photographs. So because this easily could have been just minus the mannequin image, it could have just been flat on the wall or laid all the way out flat and you take a picture above. But I think your understanding of photography gave you a reason to I want you to see it as it's intended to be worn, as opposed to just laid out and you're questioning what it's supposed to be like. And then even your choice of what is the mannequins made out of, because I mean that's just as important too, I think.
So the interesting thing is the photos came way before this. This is how the current presentation is. So I had the photographs, and I knew that because they're life size, they had to be put on something in order to be seen correctly. So during the first time that I showed them, I had them on the metal stand and just kind of, just very typical, kind of like this behind me, just had a little stand, and it wasn't really, it didn't give the entire effect, because shields, just like masks in Africa, for different occasions. So this is kind of like a wearable type mask that you put across your shoulder. So I had to come up with a way to eventually show them, to let people know what it is. So the pieces it's wood. It's a wood silhouette that I painted black, and it's on a standout mount. So if you were to look at it from the side, it's about 4 inches from the wall, so that the shield could go behind it.
Yeah. Nice.
And had you been there, I probably would have asked you to cut them out for me, but.
So how'd you get them cut? Um, yeah, and then I noticed you at some point started getting into this dyeing technique, which I think also relates to uh, I don't know what particular culture might be the same, but it relates to, it's not just a dyeing technique, and it reminded me of cyanotypes when we did that.
Mhm.
But then when you started telling me that what you were doing, I was like, oh no, they're just doing something else that had a kind of favors use the same technique. So if you want to talk about this piece as well, and I have image of it worn as well, which I think looks really great.
Yes. So this dyeing technique um, comes from Yoruba women. They use this indigo dye. Well, I'll also say that indigo is used all around the world to
Hmm.
dye fabric. It's used in jeans, which the denim color was brought
Yeah.
over by Africans when we had to do that process when it came over to the States. But so the different all the different symbols that they put into the tying off of the fabric mean something different.
Hmm.
So this one has like a moon symbol, the circle in the middle, and the moon in most African cultures is a feminine energy, but certainly in the Yoruba and the Igbo cultures, it's a feminine energy. So the blue and the moon and the coolness of it represents womanhood and everything of that nature. So what I tried to do was emulate. I found the trim after I made the after I dyed the fabric to
Right.
kind of echo the shape of the moon in the center.
And did the model cut her shirt up specifically for this, or was
No, it just happened. Oh, no, it just happened to go well. But we put
yeah,
this one on her because of it. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, I thought it was interesting, like taking that extra step to say, if you have a selection of models to choose from, and somebody comes in wearing that, you're like, yeah, you go with this piece because it's that's where you bring in those foundational elements again, like talking about foundational elements of art and the principles of design and things of that nature. But this is just kind of falls right into repetition, and so you're like, all right, we already have the frills on the shield, and here's somebody who perfectly brings that in. It's a different proportion. It's all that. That's the stuff that gets me excited to talk about art. It's like, oh, well, let's talk about this part. And then you got in the same thing, you have on the frills, you got the circles at the top of
Mhm.
each one, which is reflected in that moon symbol on there. So this is the part that I'm like, this is what I love about art.
You know what? When you put those connections together from now on, I'm just going to say yes, that was intended. I did that. You're absolutely right.
I think like I think when you've become like deeply invested in something for a long enough time, you do it by nature,
Mhm.
and you might not be thinking about, oh, I don't think any artist that that is at the master's level is sitting there thinking, all right, I want to make sure it's compositionally perfect. I'm going to get a triangle in here and do that, and I'm going to make sure I got a thin line here and a thick line here. We just look at the work and we know what's needed over time, and that's how we
Mhm.
work the artworks. And then somebody else comes in and is like, well, this is break down the artwork, and then like they're doing this, but like at no point was the artist like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. I mean, sometimes, but probably more or less we see it and it makes sense, and we don't know why it makes sense. We just feel it, but it's because of the training and all that too. Um,
So
Sweet.
the other reason why I started doing the dyeing is because I wanted to do something that represented what women do.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was, as you can see, feminine energy and womanhood plays a big part in my photography work as well as all the other work that I put into. So I wanted to find an artwork, an art medium that was at the time strictly done by women. So in the Yoruba culture, it's called Adire, and Professor Sigede is going to get me because I probably didn't say it right. But it literally means to tie and to dye.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, in Japan they call it Sabori, and other places they have a similar thing, but
Right.
that's what it's called. And so I wanted to do that because that's what traditional Yoruba women did.
Nice. Nice. I love it. I love it all. I think I learned a lot. We both learned a lot here. Um, and you in your studio space now, right?
I'm in my home
Oh,
office
okay,
right now.
nice. You still
I've been
reading?
working from home for the last year. I've been teaching online. How do you like teaching online?
It's been I've taught it differently both times.
Mhm.
So last semester, uh, I was in Norfolk, so I was teaching a studio class, and it was half and half. It was mixed, so I was like having students in person and students that were working from home. And most of them, I set it up so that like they could come to come to class like every other day, or I just had some people came Monday, some people came Wednesday. That's what pretty much what it was. And then
Mhm.
some people worked strictly from home. And I told them if they wanted to, they could pop up anytime, just to get some, in-person information and stuff like that. So that one worked well for me as a studio class because I was still able to work with the students and get them through the processes. But now it's slightly different, and the way I'm doing my classes, it's like all online, and so I don't have like a class time. I just upload the information and they do it, and I kind of respond all back through emails and things like that. So I've enjoyed what I've had to learn to make that possible, but like measurably it's been like difficult trying to understand like how to get the students as invested as I would like them to be.
Right.
So it's definitely a new challenge. I think we're all facing it. I think I could definitely do it, continue to do it, but um it's definitely I definitely see the challenge if I can't tell how invested they are. But I have like it's like any other class that I've taught as far as like the response I get from the students. Some of them come every class, turn in work on time every time, and they've got A's. And then there's some who show up less, and so you end up with that. And so um, it's just I don't think I've had any like consistency in like teaching in a particular like way over time to say like I'm proficient at teaching in-person studio classes. I've taught them all like different, all different ways and over the same amount of time. So it's really interesting. I'm like always having to reset and refigure things out.
And same for me. It was a huge transition, and the students were not happy about it at first,
Hmm.
but I think they've grown to accept. And some, like you said, some people are excelling with it, but others, like, how do you reach them? So I'm trying to schedule consultations, and I did a studio lighting class
Hmm.
completely online, which was interesting because you wouldn't think that would go well, but it actually went really well. We were able to do live critiques, and I think that forced those particular students to try things on their own without me standing over them. That was cool.
Cool, cool. So anything coming up that I don't know about, I haven't heard of? Just keeping it low key right now.
Well, the most interesting thing that came out of this pandemic is that in addition to having to teach online, I had to kind of pivot my strategy.
Hmm.
So I was coming up on my graduation. So I graduated in May. I had to do my defense virtually,
Yeah.
which was not fun. I mean, I don't have anything to compare it to, but I couldn't do. Oh, my show had to be canceled. I guess I'll have it at some point. I put my deposit in at the place. I haven't gotten it back. So eventually I'll have a show. But I had to do a complete pivot, which is how I ended up opening my studio again for photography. So I am doing portraits and branding photography, which is something that I didn't expect to do. But
Hmm.
I assumed that after I graduated, I was gonna get like a gallery type job. I was really interested in knowing about that, not kind of what you were doing with hanging and all of that, but
Right.
a gallery education position is what I was looking for. But after everything kind of took a nosedive and a lot of
Right.
museums closed, I had to quickly transition to something else, which again is the benefit to being at a school that teaches you how to pivot
Right.
quickly. Right. So I didn't panic. I just had to sit back and look at the skills that I had available to me and figure out what I could monetize.
Mm.
So that was the pro and the con. So as far as fine art is concerned, I haven't done as much as I would like simply because I'm invested in trying to get the business off the ground. But when it's stable enough, I am doing a lot of I want to do a lot of photography art type of projects where I'm incorporating, just like what I've done before with the fields, and having people possibly doing custom shields based on a conversation I have with people, and where I'm interviewing them and finding out more about them, and then building a field based off of that. And that's kind of, you showed the first couple of shields that I did, but the ones that I ended up with are the ones that I think this direction I'm going to go into. So if people will check out my Instagram page, they can see the latest one. Not that my Instagram page is super up to date.
Yeah, I was about to
They're
ask
all
you.
there.
So I was about to ask you. My next thing was going to be ask you, like, where can people follow you and things like that, or catch up with you, keep up with you.
Okay, well, I have 2 Instagram pages. For my photography, it's LaKaye Mbah Photo, and that's where you'll find all of my headshot and portrait, maternity. And I'm doing a 40 over 40 project where I'm honoring women who have reached a certain age and older. And I feel like that's kind of like a neglected age group as far as photography is concerned. Photography, marketing, the world, everybody is betting on youth, which is nothing wrong with that. But we also have to honor other people as well. So I have a 40 over 40 project. That information is on my website at LaKayeMbah.com. So my art page is Scenes in Canvas, all together, no spaces. And there I have like a lot of process where I was building the shields. I have different pictures of the shields themselves. I think I have all of them up there. And anything that is fine art related will be on that page. And also my daughter, who just loves Mensa to pieces. I haven't told her that she moved to California, Mensa. So
Wow.
yeah.
Pandemic, like, oh, it's the pandemic. That's why you haven't seen him.
Right. I don't want to break a little heart. And she'll be 10 on a couple of days, by the way.
Oh wow, yeah.
So he is doing jewelry making with my mom. So I've been posting that because that's her art. And I'm just letting her take it easy for right now. So yeah, we have that here.
Awesome. That's great. Well, I'm happy to hear from you and talk with you. And just share some time. It's been a while.
Yeah, we should do this every week.
Yeah, right. Our big brother has told us that we need to stay connected with the people that's in our circles. So, yeah, I figured this would be a good opportunity to have some of those conversations with people that I actually was doing art with for quite a while. Like when I was in the midst of like creating my thing, like you guys were there. So it was good to have this conversation. So, in time there'll be maybe another time or anything of that nature. This is great though. So maybe some other time we'll just be able to talk about any and everything and not have to dig into personal lives.
Right.
But yeah, I'm open here for any more conversation in the future. Thank you for hopping on and joining me here. This is Agency Arts, an interview with LaKaye Mbah, and we're out of here. Bye. All right, I'll just